Hi everyone, welcome back. EDSE 510 after our time off for spring break. While I know that there are many challenging and unique circumstances that we all are facing right now, my hope is that you did find some time for rest and relaxation, that you had a pleasant week off of courses, and that we are all using our healthy coping skills to manage the stress. I know that there are many different factors that are impacting each of us, so please do not hesitate to reach out. Do get in touch with me via email or messaging. I am here to support you, and I know that some of those circumstances can impact our ability to do the assignments or even perhaps to complete them on time. So I am here to help and to collaborate with you. It's been a great semester in this course so far, and we are going to finish strong regardless of some of these unexpected events. So please do keep in touch. I am here to help. We are coming back with a 1-week unit, and then after this we'll move into another 2-week unit. So you'll see here there's really only one submission required this week, and it is a discussion board. Since this is a 1-week unit, typical initial response due by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. this week, with a source citation in APA format, and then a minimum of 2 responses to others by Sunday, the final day of our unit, at 11:59 p.m. for Unit 8. So here's our Unit 8. And this week, areas of focus will be language development, communication disorders. You'll see here, assigned reading, we are reading from Turnbull. It's a fairly light week for workload. So as always, these are opportunities for us to plan ahead. Keep in mind, you will see that in our next unit, you'll have the educational philosophy paper due at the end. So it's never too early to start researching, reviewing, and working on that one. Even just reflecting on what you might submit here and what are the key points that you want to cover. That's always a good thing to get started on in a unit with a lighter workload. So we've got this reading lecture. You can see here, this is a pretty brief one, shifting the focus to better understanding some various exceptionalities or categories of eligibility. So we will be working from the Turnbull text as we move forward, and this is just the opportunity for us to look further into categories in which students can become eligible for special education services and how we might identify those needs. So as you can see, moving forward on our schedule, we have a couple different areas of eligibility that we will address in upcoming weeks. This week, looking at communication disorders and some topics of language, both expressive and receptive language and communication. There's that PowerPoint for us to review here. And this is all about understanding, working with students with communication disorders. So please do take a look at these various slides. This will be an opportunity for you to gather some statistics and understand further the various components that can contribute to eligibility determination in this area. So as you can see on this slide, slide number 6, there are a variety of factors and components that are taken into consideration when evaluating a student to make sure that he or she is on track for speech language communication. So we're taking a look at pronunciation of words, how a student is composing sentences, whether the correct vocabulary is being identified and utilized, and as I mentioned, there is the expressive and receptive communication. So what is the student saying, and is he or she processing and understanding what is being said to the student? And keep in mind, a major part of communication is pragmatic skills, and this is taking context into consideration. Many students require support in the area of pragmatics And that could be students with a variety of different disabilities, but one in which this is often used is for students with autism spectrum disorder, particularly with a focus on perspective taking, putting oneself in the shoes of the other person, so to speak, and identifying, how do I start a conversation? How do I keep a conversation going? So when we think about speech language pathologist and the work of that person, or services in this area, we often might think about pronouncing a word correctly or correcting a deficit with pronunciation of a particular sound or letter. And in reality, there's a lot more to the speech language or communication service time or the goals that might be put in place on an IEP. So here as well, we'll see a couple different speech disorders. Be sure to take a look at those. You can see here receptive or expressive. This is just basic language. As I mentioned, a student may have strength in expressive communication and formulating or completing a sentence. However, with receptive communication, may struggle with a cue or a command, and it's very important for the multidisciplinary team to do a comprehensive and thorough evaluation, whether that is initial eligibility evaluation or a reevaluation for the student, to determine what factors are contributing to these issues with receptive or expressive communication, or both. Some of that could be processing speed, and if there's any cognitive factor coming into play. Some of this as well could be if a student is learning English as a second or not as a first language. So please do keep in mind there really are different things to look at here. It's essential that we do a comprehensive evaluation, or else we're doing a great disservice to the student, to the family, and to the classroom setting in general, because we're not getting the correct supports in place. So that's why we have a team of many different experts come together. And the person largely responsible for the evaluation in this area would be a speech language pathologist provider. However, the insight can come from multiple sources, and maybe discussing with parent or family and guardian, as well as with teachers or other service providers, school psychologist or mental health provider, to determine what has been observed with the student over a period of time and what the areas of need might be. And here you'll see more information about what might be difficult for a particular student, and sometimes we can see difficulties in more than one of these areas. That can be quite common. But down here at the bottom, you'll see again, all of these are more about the way that speech is occurring, or the communication is happening or not. Some of that with word choice or struggling with that, for instance, semantic disorders, putting words together in a clear sentence. But at the bottom, we see that pragmatic component. So that is the focus on social use of language. Perspective taking, as I mentioned, is a big part of this. Starting and keeping a conversation going. For instance, a student may not practice the response when somebody greets them, the response of hello, how are you, or something of that nature. And that may not be a skill that the student has in place. So this is the option to reciprocate, rather than just saying good, saying I'm good, or I'm well, or I'm fine, how are you? So turning that question back, how was your weekend? Some of those little things that really do help with building rapport, whether that is with an adult staff member or with a peer, or even outside of the school setting. So there are many different factors that can be in place causing difficulties with speech and language. Some of this may be, for instance, even if a student has had a traumatic brain injury or some other altering event that can cause difficulty with communication that wasn't there before. Some may have this difficulty present at birth, or it may be related to another disability. As I mentioned, lots of work in the pragmatic area for students with autism spectrum disorder, so there can be relationships there. Or, as I also mentioned, the cognitive arena or intellectual disability, if that may be a factor, and some of that difficulty with processing speed and keeping up conversations or using words and language correctly. You may also see if a student has a learning disability and that affects perhaps reading and writing areas that vocabulary growth can be stunted too. A student may struggle with word meaning. Some of that can be a factor. So once again, the evaluation process, do be sure to review this. You may see the evaluator working with observations of the child. You may see specific testing, and that'll be an assessment or a variety of assessments conducted, at least a screening, which you'll see up top, checking out and making sure that these factors are not a part of the problem. For instance, if there is hearing loss, that can present as a speech language issue, and in reality, if the student cannot hear you, that's another factor to examine. Then down below, once we get to that full evaluation, we're looking at a variety of records, testing, observation. We do some interviewing as well with stakeholders, and that would feed into that eligibility determination. So again, take into consideration multicultural factors. This can be a lot more complex than what we may originally see. Once again, speech language provider may be working with more of a consultation model, checking in with those who are in frequent direct contact with the student, particularly that may be a teacher, a mental health provider, saying, how are things going with the communication? What's going on? They may push in to a student's general education or special education classroom to provide services, or there may be a service model where the student is pulled from the classroom, just dependent upon student needs and what is most beneficial for targeting the goals that are in place. So you may also see different communication devices or systems. And there could be use of boards or charts. You may see pictures that students might use to help with communication and support those skills. And this is a beautiful thing, universal design for learning. So keep in mind there are lots of different formats that can be used, and for students who have difficulty, particularly with receptive communication, these various tools and formats are essential. And again, multiple modes of expression for knowledge. This is crucial. Students might need options other than presenting in front of a class verbally, for instance. So they have lots of different things that can be in place as an opportunity to express their knowledge in a different manner. And for that pragmatic component, specific social skills, social stories can be very helpful. So the rest of the presentation just goes over some of these additional modifications, systems, and what you might often see for placement. Okay, so progress monitoring, as always, is key. Accommodations, perhaps you may see extended time. And that will wrap up this presentation, so do be sure to check that out as you move through the unit, that PowerPoint, which can supplement your reading in the Turnbull text. We have Speech and Hearing Association link here, so you'll definitely want to browse that, check it out. And that'll be a supplemental site for you. Center for Applied Linguistics as well. This is just to get some more information. And a written overview here, which you can review. Additional link. And finally, our discussion. So the question for our discussion is, which of the groups of disorders, speech or language, speech being that articulation component, or actually working with the words, and language is the meaning of those words and composing those appropriate sentences, or some of that pragmatic could fall under that category as well. Which of the two seems most impactful on education, or are both equally important? So you will cite at least 3 of your readings or materials from this unit. And as always, please reach out with any questions. Thanks.